A person who applies wrong blood to a human being is a killer.
We had discussed it several times with the Ministry of Health. They had a blood bank and so on going, but there are so many other blood banks, private and public, in the state that nobody knew exactly what they were doing. Everybody it was like a Wild West. Everybody was just doing what they liked, and there was no coordination, no regulation, no standard operating procedures and things like that. At that period in time, the HIV epidemic was on, and everybody was worried about the safety of blood because we know that it can be transmitted through blood transfusion. Because of the worry of HIV, that was what prompted. It's been discussed for years that we need a law to regulate blood transfusion in Lagos State. And I know that the Commissioner for Health at that time, Dr. Leke Piton, and Dr. Olatunji, who was a PAMSTEC at that time, had been at it so that we would have a law to regulate blood transfusion.
The main objective of the law is to ensure the provision of blood safe for transfusion, to eradicate the transmission of HIV 1 and 2, as well as other transfusion transmissible infections through blood transfusion.
And we thank God that this law was passed just at the right time so that we could now go ahead and have a blood transfusion committee of our own to be able to coordinate and regulate blood transfusion practice in Nigeria, in Lagos State, not in Nigeria, in Lagos State.
We had a situation where a lot of our pregnant women were dying either during pregnancy or in labor because they didn't have access to blood.
We strongly believe that death from postpartum hemorrhage is an avoidable death if only the right type of blood needed can be provided.
And in the cases where they had access to blood, the quality of the blood that was available in terms of the screening and in terms of how old it was and how well it had been stored was also an issue, and that was also leading to a lot of deaths. And the state decided that they needed to intervene one way or the other.
When we had this law 10, number 10, they call it, in 2004, this committee was then formed. I was then the chairman. Dr. Olaiya was the secretary. Dr. Fumi, who was the PAMSEC, was also supporting it and so on. So they asked us to coordinate and regulate blood transfusion services in Lagos State.
Commonly, blood were not normally screened, but with the events of transfusion transmissible infections, they need to follow a due process and ensure that blood are collected from the right person voluntarily, screened appropriately, and transfused to those who need their certificate due. It became necessary. And in doing so, that law brought a kind of decorum in the haphazard way blood were processing in the past.
Before the inauguration of the Blood Transfusion Committee, people were using the family replacement donors to supply blood
as a stopgap to getting 100% voluntary donation for the BTS. The use of husband donors was initiated.
We had to force people to donate blood if their wives were registering for antenatal clinic. And for that reason, you would find a lot of people were running away from our public hospitals. And a lot of crazy things used to happen because they were trying to reduce the number of non-remunerated blood donors and touts that were involved. They would introduce things like, okay, if this is your husband truly, that you're asking to donate. We are kissing him in front of us, you know, and all that. And it was really crazy because people would introduce people as their husbands that were not their husbands.
The back and funny side of this is some husbands requesting for their blood back when their wives were eventually not transfused. In such cases, it was through gentle explanation that they had to be informed that it will not be possible for us to transfuse back their blood to them, nor will they be able to take away the blood, as doing that could jeopardize the life of other people that may require blood.
Rapid kits were essentially being used, all over to screen blood at that time. And, the coordination that even private blood banks should come together to screen with Lagos State was not really there at that time. And if it was there, it was not enforced because the private, some of them were screening blood with Lagos State, some were not screening blood with Lagos State. And so the blood that was being screened by them was sold cheaper than the one screened with Lagos State. So that was a kind of setting we had before the law. Everybody was doing it the way they wanted. It was business as usual.
Everybody was doing what they liked. You are not sure of the standard or the quality of the practice and so on. So we now had to form a committee, and we started with a multidisciplinary committee because blood transfusion and looking for donors and retention of donors is not only due to doctors. It involves several aspects of the society. So this multi-sectoral or multidisciplinary committee was formed. There was us, there was a representative from the Ministry of Health, from sports, from the army, from non-governmental organizations, so that we had a committee that represented different aspects of the community that would add to the quality and to the way we practice blood transfusion, which actually was very good because they brought in a lot of ideas about recruitment of donors, retention of donors, and so on.
Preceding the law, people were not aware. So the need for people to be aware about this transition to this new law became very important.
The first thing was that we started with some activities. One of those activities was that we printed handbills, we printed flyers. The handbills, first and foremost, to introduce ourselves as the body meant to control blood transfusion in Lagos State. Secondly, we also sent flyers to private blood banks, that we are in existence, and we gave them 3 months to register.
We then had to look at how many blood banks exist in Lagos State. And to our surprise, there were so many. And we now decided that it was important for us to visit these blood banks and for these blood banks to be accredited to be able to do the work, that the work, quality work of screening, quality work of storage of blood and so on. So we now decided to get a list of the existing blood banks and to visit. And what a shock. Some people were practicing in their sitting room. Some people were practicing in their office. The refrigerator would contain food and other things that are not supposed to be. It was actually a Wild West. It was terrible.
They were in various locations, like even markets where they are selling meat, gari, rice. We discovered that even the blood collected were left on tables, and they were being given to innocent patients. They would just say the patient died of the initial disease. They would not know that probably the blood that had immobilized they gave them was the cause of the problem. They wouldn't know. People wouldn't know. Or they would say, that's the way God wants it when people died.
And we now came back and said, look, something has to be done. You cannot practice. Many of these did not have, some of them didn't have trained personnel to even do the work.
After the registration, we ensured that those who registered were given the criteria, the things they should put in their facilities for them to be licensed. And we gave them dates when we will come to inspect them. When we inspect and they don't meet up to standard, we give them another 3 months to make up. And after that, we started monitoring without announcements. At that time, too, we saw there was no documentation. People don't write what they have done. Then their blood donors were from anywhere and everywhere.
Documentation is very important in the sense that we monitor our blood from the point of collection to the point where it's being transfused and thereafter.
All our reagents, quality control on them, the blood bag used by the donor section to collect the blood. Occasionally, we take one out of it. We send it to the microbiology to culture. So that you know that the blood bag you are using is fit for the purpose it's meant to be used for.
There was an incident when a woman came and said that she had been transfused with HIV blood. And I went to work. You know, you don't want that kind of label. And this is where we talk about tracking of donors. So, because we keep records, we look at the blood given to that woman. We look at our record that blood was screened. Then I looked at those who donated the blood and I went to their houses. Fortunately, I saw some of them, they agreed, and we tested those ones that actually donated and they were negative according to our record. So that was how that case died down. Otherwise, we would have been in problems. So we stress the fact that we must know where that blood comes from. Also, we made posters telling people that no one should transfuse blood that does not carry Lagos State logo. Because those logos were already made even before I got there as the first executive secretary. These things were already in place. And so we got there and we started emphasizing everything and then enforce. The first committee that I worked with was with Professor Ibironke Akinshete. The second committee was headed by Dr. Adetomo Agbin-Davis. And I want to say and put it on record that those two both worked.
I really do appreciate our founding fathers and mothers in ensuring that we have this law that we are celebrating of, because that helps us to channel our activities in the national sphere, and we have a backing to take some decisions. So we have the governance and the law and the policies that helps us to respond to national issues and disasters.
Even in non-emergency situations, at least during my tenure, we had requests all the way from even Benin. There were people coming in from Babcock University Teaching Hospital and other places. We were able to rise to the occasion.
Number two, because of that, we're able to develop things like standard operating procedures. For example, we have the emergency stroke the disaster protocol. So once there's an emergency, a blood emergency or a disaster, we know what to do, we know who to call, we know how to organize different aspects from the blood collection to the channel of communication.
There were many good stories to share as the establishment of a coordinated state blood transfusion service afforded the states to delve into more programs that positively impacted the lives of people of Lagos State, in particular, and the country in general. Example we had there were the open heart surgery that was organized and carried out in conjunction with doctors from USA who were close friends of government senior officials. This was made possible because the Lagos State Blood Transfusion Service started preparation and production of blood components such as platelet concentrates and fresh frozen plasma, which were necessary for the successful conduct of such operations.
We also have the equipment to store large amounts of components like fresh frozen plasma.
Now, government was quite supportive. We had cold centrifuge to separate blood into components so that, it's not whole blood that you need all the time, all the other components. And we had requests from, I remember very well, some people used to fly in from Benin.
1 unit of blood can save 3 lives. The first decade, that's from 2004 to 2014, I will say averagely we have been able to impact at least 75,000 lives because blood was collected, some percentage of the blood were made into components, and many more people have benefited from it. But so much has happened in the last decade. In the last decade, an average of 150,000 to 160,000 would have benefited from blood and blood components collected and produced at the Lagos Blood Transfusion Committee.
Blood is made up of numerous other cells other than the red cells, the immunological cells, the cells that fight your immune system, the platelets, which are cells that ensure that you don't bleed to death. If you end up cutting yourself while you're shaving this morning, you just keep pressing the place and after a minute or two it stops bleeding. If you didn't have a cell in your blood called the platelets, you would bleed to death. As simple as that. If they stuck a needle in you or they cut you or anything, or you banged your toe on a rock and you started bleeding, if you didn't have a cell in your blood called platelets, you would expire. Then you have plasma, which carries all kinds of proteins that are responsible for all kinds of activities in your body. Proteins, anticoagulants, coagulants, minerals, all kinds of things. So when we take a unit of blood, as we extract a unit of blood from you, we now compartmentalize and break it up into what we call component therapy. So we separate it into red, into white, into platelets, and into plasma. And each one of them is used for different medical indications.
When I first came back about 10 years ago, I would say the way the public knew about donating blood was not actually quite right. There wasn't enough information out there. So because of that, there wasn't enough blood for those who needed it. That has improved.
So during Ebola and COVID, those are infections caused by viruses that we have no treatment for. So if you caught Ebola or COVID and you are on death's doorstep, what we did, and this is where this simple tutorial in blood transfusion is going to make sense now. We'll go to somebody who survived Ebola or who survived COVID. We would take their white blood, not the red blood, their white blood, because inside that white blood is the reason they survived, because they were able to develop antibodies, were able to kill the Ebola and kill the COVID. We take their white cells that is rich in antibodies that help them survive Ebola and COVID, and we give it to somebody that's struggling. And inside that white blood is the antibodies that would kill the Ebola and kill the COVID and give them a better chance of coming out of intensive care. We used a lot of that strategy during Ebola and in COVID. And our experience showed that it helped a lot of people walk out of intensive care.
It has actually not been easy getting voluntary blood donors because of some of the myths and misconceptions that people have about voluntary blood donation. Some people, we had times that people feel that women cannot donate blood, which is actually false. They will tell you that a woman has been losing blood every month, that it's not wise for them, but actually that is not, because it's a different side of blood.
People believe that they don't have enough blood, but process have been put in place in such a way that they are cancelled, and also administer some donor questionnaires that will inform them. So information is already available. We continue to create awareness.
We have misconceptions about if I donate my blood, I'll become thin, I'll be thinner, and I may die, or I may get infected with various diseases. So it has been one of the challenges, and that is where we actually had to now come in to sensitize people, to tell them about their safety, how blood donation is very, very, very helpful, how it can impact their lives and how they are going to save lives and all that.
As time went on, when people started knowing us, yes, we instituted the first World Blood Donor Day. We joined in celebrating it elaborately. That also advertised us, because we invited hospitals, private blood banks, companies, secondary school students, several stakeholders. And then we kept on repeating it every year.
In terms of information dissemination, awareness has increased, both on the social media and the print media. So constant, and not only that, the celebration of World Blood Donor Day has created more awareness in terms of motivating people to donate blood voluntarily. So there has been a tremendous improvement in blood donation.
Even though they are not enough, we have a pool of voluntary donors, as well as a pool of stakeholders like the non-governmental organizations and religious bodies I talked about, so that when there is a surge in the need for blood, we call to them and they can always come over to donate blood. So these protocols, the people around us, the passionate, well-meaning Nigerians around are able to get blood to us during disasters.
I remember when the bombing started in Abuja and so on, we even had the American embassy come to visit us in case, they had issues, so that where would they go first? They came in and visited and inspected us. That time we were still at Isla Maternity there as headquarters. And luckily, just before then, my committee, they had the presence of mind that, look, we need to renovate this place and bring it up to a higher standard. And we were just about finishing when the American embassy requested they wanted to visit. So we told them to please hold on. And they came and visited and they were impressed.
First of all, we need space. We need a dedicated place. We have one at the moment, but it's rather on the conservative side. We want a bigger place. We want more people. We want to be able to exchange ideas with what's in Europe, America, South Africa, India, the Middle East. We want to be able to raise our standard to the standards that are being practiced around the world.
Well, I see a future. I have a dream. I see a future where a patient needs blood. There's instant information to where they're going to get that blood from. The access to it is easy. Getting it, there's not a 24-hour, 48-hour time limit which the patient may not have.
The first potential I'm thinking about is full automation of services.
I see where the process is all electronic.
We've already taken the first step. We have said that we are automating our screening processes. Right now with the policy, we have been screened for transfusion transmissible infections. What I mean is HIV 1 and 2, hepatitis B, hepatitis C, and syphilis in a fully automated system. You don't have to have the semi-automated or where we have the interference of manual processing any longer.
I see skilled people, well-trained.
More technical staff, training and retraining. In another 20 years, I want to see that in Lagos State, not only Lagos State, in the whole of Nigeria, we deal with only voluntary blood donors.
I'm looking for the situation where we have 100% voluntary blood donation.
Because they have been said to be the foundation of safe blood.
I foresee a blood transfusion service that can meet up with the WHO's mandate of 1 to 2% of that community providing blood. I foresee a reality in Lagos State such that we can have at least 220,000 units of blood per annum. I really look forward to it. I foresee blood transfusion service that at every corner, you are going to be able to donate blood.
Strategic points that people can actually walk in not too far from their offices or their homes.
Our donors don't need to wonder that, oh God, when will I have to go to this particular center that is kilometers away? They will just go to the next street and they can find somewhere to donate blood voluntarily.
Standalone centers that people can actually walk in. We operate public holidays, we will operate weekends, and people at their own free time will come in and donate blood, not even only blood, so that they can actually donate platelets, blood products as well.
Also foresee a blood transfusion community where we could make blood products and drugs from our blood. There's so much wastage of plasma here. And if it will waste it, we can make more products. Things like coagulation factors, which are so expensive. Things like ROGAM, which are very expensive. We can collect all that plasma. Things like albumin, people need this. And we can get it from the plasma, make it into pharmaceutical products, and give it to people at a cheaper rate. I foresee such a blood transfusion service.
I want to see a standalone blood transfusion service.
I would love to see the service have a bigger standalone facility.
So if you go to any developed country, their blood transfusion service is a standalone institute.
So that everything can be in one place.
A place where everything starts and ends, as far as the policies and the activities are concerned.
They need to get more visibility. They need to let the people know that they're there and they're there for them to protect their interests in having safe blood for transfusion.
So you want to be able to be sitting in Lagos and know that at any point in time, if I or anybody close to me or a loved one or any colleague needs access to a blood or a component of blood, that I can put my hand on my chest and say, I trust Lagos State. Lagos will not fail its citizens.
And I see a future where the patient will not have to wait indefinitely or die from lack of not getting blood transfusion, and then they do not have to pay for it.
I foresee a Lagos State Blood Transfusion Committee that we could sleep and be rest assured that every unit of blood that is transfused anywhere in every appropriate or registered healthcare facility will be safe and without any means of quackery.
you.